Today on CityCast DC. Let me tell you something. There is nothing that hits quite like a good diner. Unlimited coffee, comforting no-frills food that's just the right amount of greasy. But in a city like DC, where everything seems bespoke and overpriced, do we really even have any good diners left? This is what Washington Post writer Warren Rojas set out to answer, and his list of DC's best diners got people talking. So Warren slides into the booth with my co-host Michael Schaefer and I to defend his DC diner picks. Today is Wednesday, February 25th. I'm Bridget Todd, and here's what DC is talking about. Warren, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to a lively conversation about all things diners.
So listen, you wrote a piece in the Post, local newspaper people might have heard of, about some iconic DC diners, which I guess you ate a lot for. How'd you come up with this list of places?
Well, so, local dining was kind of my wheelhouse while I was over at the Post, and certainly something I've always been passionate about. I mean, in a perfect world with infinite resources, I'd be filing road food style dispatches from around the country of, great greasy spoons that you have to pull over and visit whenever you find them. But in this case, we just wanted to do something comfort foodie, something, it's cold, it's miserable outside. You want somewhere where you can hang out and really sink your teeth into the experience. And so I pitched, let's do some old school diners. And I know people are going to say, or as, you can read through the comments like everyone else, why didn't you include this one or why didn't you include that one? But it really was a function of, trying to find some of these timeless places that have been around for a while. And the caveat being, if you don't enjoy them now, they will go away eventually. These things don't last forever. So, I try to keep that in mind. And then I also just picked places that, are scattered all over the area. So you're not just, one place or the other, DC, Maryland, or Virginia. So a pastiche of diners for people to enjoy.
You might not have thought that this piece was controversial, but I have to tell you that in our prep meeting about this interview and about the piece, it did kind of hit a bit of a nerve. I think that DC is one of those cities where we all celebrate a great dive bar or these things that maybe seem kind of like budget-friendly, no frills. But because this is DC, what you're actually celebrating is a dive bar where a drink is $10 or a diner where a plate of pancakes is $20. Do you know what I sort of am getting at here?
Bridget, I totally get it because, as I said, some people are ardent supporters of what they consider their neighborhood spot. And they're just like, why didn't you include this one? I did get comments of, why not Tune In? Tune In has diner-style food for sure, but Tune In is a dive bar in, the greatest sense, in every sense of the word. I mean, it is Congress's dive bar. There are politicians getting hammered there right now because that's what one does.
At 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Well, it's a Friday and they've done their work for the week. So, it's time to enjoy the spoils. The way I kind of drew the lines here were if they self-identified as a diner, that was helpful because you have places that are more family-style restaurants, local restaurants. Table Talk in Alexandria, in Old Town Alexandria is a perfect example. My father lived at that place when he, because he worked for Metro, so he was always looking for a place bright and early that he could get to before work. So Table Talk was his go-to, but Table Talk is a restaurant, double T. People bit my head off saying, oh, it's a chain, there's multiple of them. Okay, but they are diners. They started in Baltimore and they serve, that community. So they made it in. Table Talk didn't, but we can't have everything. But I tried to do as try to cast as wide a net as possible.
All right, so we'll get to your actual list of places people should go in a second. But I want to stop on this question too, because there's a sort of definitional one. You said you start with places that self-identify as diners, which is fine. But there's a lot of places in DC that seem to me more like diner-themed chef restaurants than actual like age-old places that you can go in and get a cheap plate of eggs in the afternoon. And they feel a little phony to me. And this probably speaks well of your character. You did not try to adjudicate who's quote unquote genuine and who is not. But what do you make of that sort of divide? Because I get annoyed at this idea that a diner is this like precious thing that is, one, where you're going to pay a lot, and two, you'll drive to some distant neighborhood to go to the diner. The point is, these are supposed to be familiar, comfortable places, not that far away.
Oh, no, absolutely, Michael. And yes, to your point, there's plenty of places in DC, in and around DC, that call themselves diners. Ted's Bulletin identifies as a diner, but Ted's Bulletin is a dressed up version of, a step up version of, a classic diner. Same thing with Unconventional Diner right there in Convention Center. David Deshays, famously worked for Michel Richard. He's a classically trained French chef. He has, a very high end Italian restaurant, L'Ardente. But Unconventional Diner has, don't get me wrong, their food is terrific. Their burger is actually an excellent lunch item, and I've enjoyed it many times. But it's called Unconventional Diner. That's the theme, and it is unconventional by virtue of it being elevated. It's trying to dress up and make the diner experience a little bit snazzier, a little bit more DC, as it were. But that's not what I think people are looking for necessarily. Same thing with Silver Diner. People, lobbied. Why didn't you include Silver Diner? Silver Diner, the Silver Diner I remember from when I was a kid growing up in this area was a greasy spoon, was, the train car model. And then at some point in the past decade or so, the chef, Ipi, decided to take it in a whole health food oriented way. He's very much on local sourcing and making it much more vegetarian, vegan, and sustainable minded. Again, kudos to him for toying with the diner model and making it his own. But I still think people are more likely to seek out chipped beef, a giant slice of carrot cake, these types of comfort foods versus a fabulously plant-based burger that, he's worked up at Silver Diner. So
it's like a giant metaphor for our country.
The last time I was at Silver Diner, I did have like a quinoa bowl and a mimosa. I don't know that those are typically what you might consider diner food.
No, they would take you out and beat you up at a real diner if you.
I'm sure that order will get you bounced from the tune-in for sure, or flagged as a person of interest. But I'm sure that quinoa bowl was terrific because, again, if it does, he knows his stuff and he's making magic over there. He's just changed his approach to it. And I think people still rather have, fried eggs, hash browns, comfort foods.
All right, walk us through what you put on your list in the post.
In terms of trying to get different areas in different places, I did consider probably about 24 or so places. I went out as far as Frederick to the Mountain View Diner, poked around, Steak and Egg, which people love to talk about, but it is not what it was once upon a time. It's changed. So I wound up with a handful of places, most of which have been around for at least 25 years, many of which have been around for longer. But the short list wound up being Bob and Edith's, which started right there on Columbia Pike, family-owned spot. Double T Diner, which started out in the Baltimore area, now has, I think, 3 locations. Amphora's Diner Deluxe, which, of course, long live the Amphora in Vienna. That was a 24-hour spot that I spent a youthful evening recuperating there and enjoying their baked goods. The Diner in Adams Morgan, which is having its 25th anniversary. Pete's Diner on Capitol Hill, which remains, a go-to place for lots of people, staff, Congress members. Famously used to be frequented by Speaker John Boehner. And Tasty Diner up in Bethesda. That one is dipped in amber. Nothing's going to change there. And people still bemoan the fact that the original Silver Spring location, which was, so beloved it became a historic landmark, is no longer with us. So, yeah. And then Murray and Paul's in Brooklyn, which, that place is wild from time to time, depending on...
What's so wild about it?
It is kind of like eating in, your best friend's basement. It's all like wood paneling and just like the whole place looks like it could be condemned at any minute because they're not worried about the decor. They're not worried about, zhuzhing up anything. They're worried about getting you what amounts to, I'd say, about a pound of corned beef hash when you order the corned beef hash special, which is amazing. It's an old school grill that, whatever, if it's not on the menu, they'll make it. Oh, what, you want a smash burger? Whatever, we'll smash the burger. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel. They'll just make whatever. If they've got the ingredients, they'll make it. So it's great.
Catch world-class arts in DC this spring for free. The Peabody Institute of the Johns Hopkins University presents the Peabody Performance Series, a full season of free concerts at the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg Center, located at 555 Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest. The Peabody Performance Series brings the artistry and innovation of one of the nation's leading conservatories to the heart of DC with concerts and programs spanning jazz, classical music, and dance. Take a midday break with the Peabody Graduate Jazz Ensemble on February 27th. On March 24th, experience the Dance Showcase featuring contemporary choreography by Peabody faculty and alumni. On April 10th, the first of the Slang lecture series examines spirituals as the cultural bedrock of the American sound, led by distinguished visiting faculty artist Darren Atwater. Hear the Baltimore Jazz Collective's original compositions, arrangements, and swinging improvisations on April 17th. On May 1st, pianist Stephen Spooner presents Aspects of Liszt. And on May 8th, the season concludes with a performance by the Peabody Jazz Ensemble. While all events are free, tickets are required for entry. Learn more and get your tickets at washingtondc.jhu.edu. Life can change in an instant, and that can feel especially true in the winter months. One moment, everything feels normal, and the next, someone else's mistake turns your world upside down. That's when you need a team you can count on. NACE Law Group has been standing up for DC families for decades, fighting for neighbors hurt by medical malpractice, wrongful deaths, and serious injuries. They don't just settle quickly or push papers, they dig in, fight hard, and make sure every client gets the justice they deserve. And here's something we love. They're a longtime supporter of CityCast, because just like us, they care about this community and the people who call it home. So if you or someone you care about has been hurt, don't wait. Call NACE Law Group. They'll stand with you, fight for your family, and make sure your rights are protected, so that you can focus on what matters most. Visit WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com. That's WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com.
I see that you put the diner in Adams Morgan on the list. It seems like it has to be on there because it's called the diner. I love the diner. I go there all the time. I don't know if I would say that it qualifies as a diner. Can you defend this position?
I mean, they call themselves a diner, but to your point, right, I'd say that was the newest of the ones on my list, even though, like I said, it is historic having been around, but it is part of that family of restaurants. I mean, you could argue that Tryst, which is like 2 doors down, is also a diner. I mean, it serves many of the same functions and probably caters to the same crowd. And the diner, I think I mentioned in the piece, doesn't look like any of the other ones. Like, it's got high ceilings, a huge bar. You know, the vibe is different than, say, at Metro 29 or at Tasty. But the foods are there. They play with it, too, in terms of they do have a, liquor bar, including boozy milkshakes, which that'll definitely take your Sunday in a different direction. But it is, I think that one went in for the vibe. As you said, I guarantee there are people there right now. There will be people there at 4 a.m. There will be people there Sunday morning brunching it up. So it is a neighborhood mainstay that I think people just look to for, that's the place where they're going to hang.
Well, that seems like a really interesting endeavor for a food writer, because typically when food writers go out or food critics go out, you're looking for the place with some unique dish that they've done in an incredible way that blows your mind, that is not something you've had before. You're having this Madeleine experience in your mouth. But a lot of what we're talking about with the diners, it's like judging a dog show or something, like where instead of, you're not judging like the Saint Bernard against the Beagle, you're judging the Saint Bernard against the ideal of what a Saint Bernard is supposed to be. And in this case, you're not out there looking for the place that has a unique dish on the menu. You're looking for the perfect corned beef hash like everyone else has, but better.
Well, to some extent, Michael, but it really is, like I said, this one was about, time and place, kind of like a capsule of where do people turn to when it is bitter cold outside. They want to warm up. They want to feel like they're in a familiar space. And that's what these places are. I mean, some people visit these places like daily. They have that fiercely loyal clientele that comes to Metro Diner to read the paper, a physical, tactile paper, drain endless cups of coffee. Maybe they eat, maybe they don't, and then they dip out. Some of these places are like community centers, depending on I had a similar experience when I was writing about delis and stuff. it wound up being that I witnessed lots of places where it is like you walk in, you think you're just going to get a sandwich and stuff, and you're treated to a show because it is an entire neighborhood of moms with kids and strollers, or retirees getting together to talk about whatever they just saw on the news or heard on next door, or saw whatever. They go to these places because they're comfortable, because they're familiar, and in many cases the food can be incidental. It's just like, whatever, they have eggs, I'll have some eggs. In other places it's like, wow, they've got the best Benedicts, or a medley of Benedicts, Cajun, Old Bay style, Greek, whatever. But people just love spending time in diners. And I mean, I think we could all use a little bit more love right now, right? So diners it is.
Is that part of what makes a diner, like a quintessential diner experience, that community aspect? It almost kind of becomes more important than maybe the food you're getting?
I mean, I'm always still going to lean towards let's make the food experience, but absolutely, it's the environment, it's the vibe, it's the familiarity, it's the you want to feel like it's a homecoming every time, even if it's, I think I mentioned in the Tasty Diner piece, like on more than one occasion, different waitresses just called me hun. I don't think that's like in their like morning briefing on please call people hun and smile and wave. Like, they've been doing it for so long. I might have been older than some of them, whatever. They're just like, whatever, you're here, you're hun, and they treat you like family. And it's so refreshing and so endearing that if the coffee doesn't get filled immediately, I'm willing to let it go because I know that the coffee is going to get filled sooner rather than later. And I'm hanging out, so no rush.
I think some owners listening to this podcast might actually start having a morning briefing where they encourage their staff to call people on, because it's going to turn on food critics.
May I turn the tables and ask you, what would you, Michael, or you, Bridget, what are the parameters for your ideal diner experience, or what is the thing that makes any of these places or your particular place distinctive?
Well, here's the thing for me that makes like a list like this a strange beast, which is that all these things you have just discussed, right? This is a familiar place. People are like family, all of those things. That indicates it is a place that is close to your house or on your commute or somehow able to be part of your regular life so that you can actually develop real familiarity with the waitresses. They're not just affecting when they call you hun, they know you. But here we are picking up a well-curated list of diners that encourages us to drive to like Frederick to go to a diner, which might be amazing, but which is probably not going to be, unless you live in Frederick, probably not going to become a regular part of your life.
For me, I will say, I think all of your points about what makes a good diner are correct.
100%.
I don't know that I have a real diner spot in the district. And I'm reminded of this time, this was maybe 15 years ago. I was in Philadelphia and I had missed my bus back to DC. And the next bus wasn't until, maybe my bus was at 1 a.m. and the next bus was coming at 6 a.m. And I didn't have enough money for a train ticket or anything. So I said, okay, I guess I'm going to spend 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. in Philadelphia in the middle of the night. Went to a 24-hour diner, and you want to talk about a diner. There were literally people smoking in there inside the restaurant. And I thought, we don't have this in DC. This is not something I'm finding in DC. It was a perfectly lovely experience. And I don't know how they were able to serve alcohol past 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. and smoke indoors.
I don't know that rule enforcement is a big part of Philadelphia civic culture.
Here in DC, rule enforcement is a bigger part of our culture. Ergo, I don't know that I could say that I've had a real, authentic, true diner experience in DC.
I mean, that's an interesting point because, and I think there's other places in the Northeast that certainly have a much more vibrant diner. I mean, New Jersey, there's one like every 25 feet. And to your point, they seem cookie cutter in terms of it's probably a prominent, extended Greek family running the place. But once you get inside, each neighborhood or locality has a specific feel to it and a specific, lust for, you see it in the specials. Like, they've all got moussaka and they've all got the pancakes, but, some of them are doing lamb, some of them are doing more of Persian style food. It really is dictated by the community. Like, it's not cookie cutter. It's not, like a Waffle House where what the menu is, whether you're in Georgia or in, Mississippi. It's going to be the same thing. And God bless Waffle House. I love them. But yeah, they have personality. So yeah, I think DC, I wish we had more super, lively diners that were 24 hours and, become a rave on Friday nights, become a Sunday arts section on Sundays where people are just talking books and reading and yelling and meet the press or whatever. You don't see that, unfortunately. And I think if somebody wanted to throw some money at it, I think I'd spend time in that diner too.
Well, let me ask you this another way then. As you say, there's diners much thicker on the ground in a lot of places, including in like New York, another very expensive city. Why aren't there diners in Washington? Is it a real estate question? Is it a sort of culture question? You mentioned Greek families owning them. Is it a sort of who owns and operates the diners question? Do you have a theory of the case as to why this sort of ubiquitous, what's supposed to be a familiar thing in every neighborhood is not so ubiquitous here?
I mean, that is certainly something I would love to think more about because
It's all good.
I'm not a real estate expert, but I think that there are a lot of these things come in waves and cycles in terms of, if there's downturns in the economy, the high end places are the first to go because no one can afford to go, to the 5-course, $300 tasting menu anymore. I mean, I don't think I've seen a lot of diners popping up recently, but the places that like I did write about, they are testaments to the fact that if you keep doing it, people will come because, there's nothing to your point, like none of them necessarily have a standout egg dish or a standout anything, but they're all reliable. They're all comfortable, approachable. These are the things that I'm not saying that you have to drive to Pete's on Capitol Hill for any particular reason other than if you're in that neighborhood,
Yeah.
Pete's
Yeah.
kills it, and it's not necessarily going to blow your mind, but it's great for people watching. It's got a vibe, and I will say comparable to like Jimmy T's, which again, people yelled at me, why not Jimmy T's? I just like Pete's better. I thought it fit what I needed more than Jimmy T's. Is the food on par at both places? Again, I probably like Pete's a little bit better just because they do have some kookier dishes, but c'est la vie.
Wait, who does own the diners around here? Is it possible to generalize the way it might be in some other cities?
The Amphora for sure is family owned. That was two brothers, Greek, I believe, who started that and expanded out to the place in Herndon. And they still also have a huge bakery, which, Amphora has always hung its hat on these monstrous desserts, which are amazing. Pizza's owned by a longtime woman who's been there, I think, 20, 30 years, maybe longer. Bob and Edith's was a couple who took over a pre-existing spot, put their name on it, and made it their own. And now Bob and Edith's has, I think, more than a half dozen locations across, mostly in Virginia. Double T Diner was family. I can't remember if it was brother-in-law type of situation, but they were, Baltimore guys who decided they wanted a piece of the action and did that. Tasty Diner for sure was a family thing. So these are really the types of places that you don't see a lot of the David Deshays, like a fancy chef who now wants to kind of do a little side project or kind of put his stamp on a thing. It's more of an organic, we live in this area. We want a place for people to hang out and have pancakes and waffles and everything. So let's see what we can do with that. But that's also from a bygone era of, hey, the community needs something. Let's see what happens without putting it up, for a focus group.
Are there any new spots that are opening that you're looking forward to?
New diners? Ooh, I wish. No, I can't think of any new diner or even diner model type places. I think we're seeing a lot of more like all day cafes for sure. And those types of like places that are a little bit more food focused than like a coffee shop, but they're doing cafe model in the day, and then at night they turn into more like a wine bar / cocktail bar, and then they just kind of go dark during lunch because they want to take a little break. But yeah, pure diner, I can't think of one. But if you think of one, by all means, let me know because I would love to go there and we should go together.
If a diner was to open in your neighborhood, would you rather it be opened by like random Greek family that owns a couple diners already in New Jersey or brand name DC chef?
I mean, I don't know that I'd have well, I would obviously, I think I would I would opt for local owned or local experience versus out of towners, but I don't know that that's a hill to die on. I would need to see what the end product is. And by virtue of it being my neighborhood, it's already a big plus, right? Because it's accessible and closer in than having to go to anywhere else. So travel is a factor. But I mean, I'm always home team first. God bless all the New York spots that they send us, because God knows we need more steakhouses. But, I'd love to see what local people have, what's on their minds, and how they kind of have make their own fun.
Let me hit you with a curveball. It is a goal in life of mine to have a sandwich named after me at a diner. If there was a sandwich named after you at a diner, what would be on it?
I mean, unfortunately, it already exists. I mean, the name exists, but the concept could use some refining. It's at Denny's. It's called the Dagwood, because I can tell you when I wore younger men's clothes at James Madison University, they have the dining hall, which everyone is required to eat at when you're on campus in their freshman year. After that, I moved off campus, and I had friends who would pay for me once I moved off campus, they would pay for me to come have lunch with them in the dining hall. A, so they could watch me eat, and B, so I would make them food, because I would go through the whole dining hall. And, one line was breakfast foods, one line was burgers, one line was Italian. And I would create these monster sandwiches, because I would go get, fried eggs, put them on a bun. I would go to the burger. I would get a bacon cheeseburger, put that on the bun. I would go find a chicken parm. I would create these epic constructs that were basically they went in my go bag, because I just made these sandwiches, put them in my bag, and then I didn't have to, buy groceries that week. And meanwhile, the trade-off was that my friends, I would make one for them too, and they would eat it there. And they were just blown away by, like, where did you even find that? Like, I went through this place twice already, and I didn't even see that. I was like, you didn't look under the right steam table, brother. It was there. You just got to find it.
Can we start a GoFundMe to buy this man a restaurant?
Yes!
Warren, thank you so much for being here, my friend.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for chatting. And, everyone should go out and support their local diner, because they deserve it. They're doing God's work over there.
That is all for today here on CityCast DC. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of our new members. We could not do what we do without you. Becoming a member directly supports the expansion that CityCast is making in local news, and you can become a member at membership.citycast.fm. That's membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with even more news from around the city. Talk to you soon.